Excellent. All right. It is a short snippet, and here we go.
His father and I met when we were very young. I was 14, he was 15, and we were together until I was 30. There wasn't physical abuse, but there was definitely verbal and mental abuse. All I knew is it was better than what my father had done to my mom. I think it started more after my son was born, because then I was more his property. He wasn't punching me in my face, you know. He was just controlling what I ate, where I went, who I saw, and what day of the week I did certain things. And you don't, when you're in that situation, you don't look at that as abuse. It took me over 4 years to actually get the courage to leave. Finally got me to leave was when he threatened to kill my daughter. He had said that I better watch myself and I should surely watch her. When I left, I really left everything behind. I came with 3 bags and that was it. I did need to come here. I needed to save my life and save my daughter's life. And even though I don't have my son with me, I needed to show my son that there are strong women out there, and that's the kind of woman you want to be with. 3 years later, the abuse still continues in different ways. He now uses the court system with my son. I have probably been to court 80 to 100 times. I have 2 children. I don't just have one. And it's really hard to be a part of my son's life. I just want to be his mom. And to be his mom, it risks my daughter's life. So sometimes I feel like I have to choose between my children. The one thing his father can't do is break 9 years of what I did to him. As much as he can say what he wants now, my son is the truth. I think that's the part that gives me hope. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I was in an abusive relationship. It seems like the day we got married, he changed. I became his property. For 2 years, it had been the mouth, the yelling, the screaming, the controlling, the put down, the name calling, but it had never been physical. So the first time he got physical, my ex-husband beat me up, punched me, kicked me, spit on me. And I knew then that I had to go. I started getting harassed. I had to change my phone number numerous times. I had to change my way of living. He's breaking down my door. He's trashing my apartment. Somehow, someway, his arm came through the bedroom door. He had stabbed me in my back. I was in the hospital about a week, and
And I went to stay at my mom's house to recover because my family didn't want me to go back home. I was extremely scared, extremely scared. But I had to get my life back on track for myself and my family. It was an awesome experience. Just watching my victim advocate talk with the prosecutor, talk with the judge. She was my voice. I never had to say anything. They were there for me. When I called the hotline crying 2 o'clock in the morning. But sometimes out the blue, someone from into my house was just coming. Hey, just how are you and your daughter doing? We're doing good. Today wasn't a good day, but I'm okay. I love my job. I love what I do. The victim said, Liz, you don't understand. You just don't know. I could say, yes, I do understand. Yes, I do know. I always told myself I wanted to get back to my house. My advocate was there every step of the way. My daughter is doing fantabulous for what we went through. She's doing great. She's 22 years old now, and she's in college.
You are the strongest person ever. I just wanted you to know that I thank God all the time for giving you a second chance at life and being able to raise me and mold me into a beautiful young lady. I love you with all my heart, and you're such a survivor. Enjoy this month, and again, I love you.
When we got married, the first thing after that I do was an assault. So that right there, I was like, wow, where is the person that I just said I do to? The reason why I left was because I was worried about my children, about their safety, the attention shifted from me to them. And when that happened, I knew it was time for me to go. Told my boys to pack 2 pair of pants and 2 pair of shoes. We're gonna go on trip. Called my mom all the way in Germany. And I told her what I did. And I said, I'm stranded. So for 5 days, she paid me hotel after hotel. There was no bag. She was like, I would love to help you, but I can't. There's not enough resources. There's nowhere I can put you. That night, I was like, okay, if I don't hear nothing by tomorrow, I gotta call him. I don't know how to like provide for them. You know, there was no money. Bank cards was canceled. It was it. And then the next morning, I got a call, and they were like, we got a room. I didn't know what to expect, and I came here, and I was interviewed by a crisis counselor. She told me all these things and helped me and asked me questions. Slamming doors, yep. Taking money, yep. Name calling, yep. Telling me what to wear, yep. So this little checklist, and I was like, that's abuse. Whenever I needed somebody, somebody was here to listen. Whenever I needed help, someone was here trying to help. Now they are great. They are thriving in school. My oldest son, he found his voice and he's not scared. My middle son, he feels comfortable in who he is. And my little one, he is challenging at times. I think he has some characteristics of his dad. When he gets upset, go and slam the door. And if I said, you don't slam the door, so daddy slams the door. Or it would kind of like yell back at me. Daddy does that. So it took some redirecting to tell him that's not the way you do things. We learn that what we see is scary. It also shows me that I made the right decision.
They're gonna be okay.
What I've gotten from the interval house is my life back.
I do the work I do because of my ex-husband, because of what I went through. I'm much stronger than I ever was.
It doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter if you're rich or if you're poor, it doesn't matter. Anything is possible. I'm happy and I'm not scared. Saving lives,
Giving a voice.
changing the future.
All right, I'm gonna stop my screen share, but before I stop my screen share, I know some people are having issues with audio. Can you hear us now? I don't know if you can hear us now. And I also wanted to do a quick recognition of the land that we are on before I turn it back over to Honorable Judge Kevin Washington. We are on Indigenous Native American land, on the land of the Paquonic tribe, the Tungus tribe, the Puxatawny tribe, the Rivers tribes, which is 35 plus tribes known and unknown to our nation, the Podunk, the Wagunk, and the Algonquin tribes. So I just wanted to highlight the land and honor that we are on Indigenous land. All right, and I'll stop my screen share and hand it right on over to Honorable Judge Kevin Washington.
Again, hello, everyone. Deputy Mayor Bress, thank you for being here. I know some other people are having technical problems with the QR code, Mary Jane and Kay, so they hopefully will trickle in some kind of way. But I want to thank you personally, and as the chair of the Human Relations Commission for the town of Windsor, for both Mary Jane, Mrs. Foster for being here, and Kay Munoz for being a part of this conversation today, brought to us through Interval House. I'd like to thank the town of Windsor and our liaison, Patrick McMahon, who is a part of this team. My vice chair is Castella Copeland there. James Madison is our secretary, George Armstrong, Lizette, Thomas Haynes, Becky Jacobson, Leonard Swade, Ryan Bob, and Linda Massa. We have a lot of outstanding programming that's coming forth. This is one of them. But we are going to be talking
Hey, Keith.
We're going to be talking about Indigenous and Native Americans. But we're going to do youth conversations this year. Of course, the Bridge Builder Awards. We're going to discover and discuss the Holocaust. Of course, there's Black History and Juneteenth. Our phenomenal women will return. We will hope to visit the Holocaust Museum this year in New York and Tolerance Center, as well as the Harriet Tubman homestead in New York. Also, go back to the African American History Museum for a third time. So all are invited to take part in that. And without further ado, I again turn it over and introduce you to the Interval House president and CEO. This outstanding lady became the chair and CEO in 2017 did this vital work after Ms. Enrico was the ex-director before Ms. Mary Jane took place. She is a passionate businesswoman in Bridgeport. She is also a lawyer. When do you sleep? And then, of course, she is a community activist. And she has facilitated and worked through many, many different programs. I haven't become a part of yet, but I am looking forward to any information I can receive on Men Make a Difference, Men Against Domestic Violence. Without further ado, write that down, Kay. I know you got your pen over there. I'm gonna get that email. I know probably in 2.2 minutes. But I want to thank you for being here. Again, I'm going to say hello to Deputy Mayor Bress, and one of our council members is also on, Mrs. Foster, who is Jody Terranova. So without further ado, I'm going to give you the stage, and you and Kay and Mary, thank you again for being here for this vital conversation.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. Two things. One is you are now on my list for Men Make a Difference. And two, I sleep often and I sleep well. Promise. So I've been at Interval House since January of 2017. I was only the second executive director, now president and CEO, in the history and of the organization. And this year we celebrate 45 years of service. I'd prefer, all things considered, to be unemployed and Interval House out of business, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Interval House is a wonderful place, and I was given a great gift because when it was founded, which was in the basement of Asylum Hill Congregational Church, it came out of a revelation, a sharing of experience in a women's support group, and there a woman, actually my predecessor, shared the abuse that she was living through in her marriage. And a group of women got together and said, this isn't right, this isn't good, and we have to do something about it. And they came together and formed this wonderful organization. And luckily for me, they never did anything else. So Interval House is a very traditional organization in domestic violence. We have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year hotline. We have a safe house. We have advocates that help women process the court things that are necessary for them. And then we have community education, and that's what we do. We don't do anything else. We do crisis intervention, and we help victims become survivors and get to their next best place. So it's a very, if you will, and I don't mean this with any arrogance at all, but it's a very pure organization, which has allowed us to be the kind of organization we are. Interval House serves 24 towns and cities, all the way from, East Granby and Canton to Marlborough to Farmington to Manchester, East Hartford, all of those towns, rural, suburban, urban, rich, poor, varied. It's an incredibly diverse geographic area. And I will tell you, because everyone always asks, yes, we have victims in every single one of those 24 towns and cities. Lucky for us, because we have stuck to our knitting, if you will. We have been able to respond to the extraordinary explosion of domestic violence cases. I'll talk about that, towards the end of our deck. I want you to learn a little bit more about domestic violence, but first I wanted you to know a little bit about Interval House. We are in a growth mode. We're going to end up by the end of this year, I think, at 39 employees. It's been between 29, mid-30s. We have an almost $3 million budget, and we run very, very lean. There are only about 5, now maybe 6 administrative positions, and everybody else is a direct service volunteer. You saw one of my favorite, most fabulous, extraordinary advocates on that film, Karen Gaston, who is, she is magic in the courts. She is just magic. She's also magic in each and every one of our lives. So we're incredibly fortunate to have the structure that we do, to have the people that we do. And because of circumstances, we are about to grow, and we are going to grow in very significant ways that address our service gaps, which we identified through research and COVID. But we are going to grow to meet our need. We're still sticking to our knitting. We're not growing, no new programs. We are just filling gaps that we identified. So let's talk a little bit about domestic violence and intimate partner abuse. Okay, Kay, this is where our fabulous community convener comes in. Kay Munoz is going to take care of the slides and watch the chat room. Save your questions. We'll certainly have plenty of time for questions as we move through this. Okay, Kay. So intimate partner violence is really about control. It's people think it's about all kinds of things, but it's about control. It's about a pattern of behavior where one partner tries to control and dominate the other. It's, you know, people think that it's about, oh, take your pick, rich, poor, race, religion, education. It's about none of those, or alcohol or mental health, or it's about none of those things. It is only about control. All of those other things can be triggers, but they are not what intimate partner violence is about. That is solely about control, controlling another human being's life. And the way that control happens takes a myriad of forms. Our types of abuse are, excuse me, are varied. We all think of domestic violence and intimate partner abuse as the physical abuse, you know, the hitting, choking, slapping, black eyes, broken ribs. That's what we think of when we think of domestic violence. But there are other forms of abuse that are just as severe and just as damaging to a victim. That would certainly include emotional or psychological abuse. Verbal abuse is devastating. It is absolutely devastating. By the time an abuser has isolated, which is the first order of business, his or her victim, so that victim no longer regularly sees family, friends, work colleagues, maybe doesn't go to church or a house of faith anymore. By the time all that isolation has happened, the next thing begins this verbal abuse, this psychological abuse, where you are, take your pick, short, dumb, fat, an idiot, a moron, you can't cook, you can't clean, I'm sorry I ever married you, you're filthy, you're disgusting, all of that. And it goes on and on and on. And it's so demeaning and diminishing that often when people say, why did she stay? Which is the worst thing you can say, by the way, about a victim or survivor of abuse. You get into a place as a victim where you don't believe there are any options. You don't believe you are worthy of a different life. You don't believe that anyone loves or likes you enough to help you get to another life. So emotional and psychological abuse are really, really difficult and serious forms of abuse. We also see sexual abuse. We actually had a woman come into the safe house who had ruts in her wrists from being tied to the bed. It's a question of coercing victims to have sex or to do things that they don't want to do sexually. And it's also the threat, just the constant threat hanging over your head. And so sexual abuse is a piece of that. And most people don't know, but I know this is alarming, but it wasn't until 100 years ago, 102 years ago, that it was illegal to beat your wife. And wait till you hear this one. It wasn't until 1983 or 4 that it was illegal to rape your wife. So this is pretty new stuff and pretty awful stuff. but we see it all of the time. One of the things that we are seeing much, much, much more frequently is financial abuse. And it's one of those things, why don't you quit that job? That job is nothing. You can't do it anyway. You don't need that job. If you loved me enough, you'd be with me. You wouldn't be taking your time working where you are. That's a jerk job. And so a victim will quit his or her job and then is totally dependent. And before you know it, doesn't have his or her own credit card, doesn't have his or her own checking account, and there are no resources. There are no resources, and there is no place to turn. You've been isolated from your family and friends, now from your job, and now all of the money is controlled by someone else who will not give you access to it. It's really, really brutal. As a lawyer, one of the toughest cases I ever worked on was a guy who left his wife and moved to their horse farm in Virginia. And she had nothing. And he even took her medications. She was diabetic. He took the keys to the cars. He took all of the money. He shut down everything, took the cars. She had absolutely nothing. And their great big house in the country was not easily accessible. And she finally realized she was going to have to walk some distance to a neighbor's house to try to get some help. And legal aid couldn't work with her because she had assets, but they weren't hers. You know, they were jointly held, but she had no access to them. And it was a really stark case of what can happen, and a reminder that this can happen to anyone. It's not about your title on your business card. It's not about the amount of money you have. This can happen to anyone. And so those are the sort of traditional types of abuse that we think of. But one of the really frightening, really frightening forms of abuse is technological. And we are seeing more and more of that. There is tremendous cyber stalking, Facebook, all social media, a constant text. Sometimes you read these cases about hundreds and hundreds of texts that just keep coming. There's gaslighting. One of the latest things is the GPS tracking in these Apple AirTags. And actually, one of our victims that we were working with said she had this aha moment. And it was one of the last things that got her to realize she had to leave. He always knew where she was, but he didn't know what she was doing. And she finally figured out that he was tracking her. And sometimes it's a GPS tracker, you know, on the inside of the rim of your tire well. Sometimes it's you can put an Apple AirTag in the crevice of a car seat. You can slip it into the bottom of a, great big handbag. Which one of us ever gets to the bottom of our handbag? Nobody. And so you don't realize then. And I want to say two things about that. A thing about that, stalking and strangulation are the two greatest indicators of future lethality. That would be death. Stalking is an incredibly dangerous indicator of what's in store. So it's very, very, and when you can get away with it in technology, it only fuels the danger. It's a very, very scary, frightening thing. One of the first things we do when a victim comes into Safe House is make sure that all of the locator buttons on the phone are turned off. Ditto any other technology she or he might have. So it's something to pay attention to, and we're all, it changes every day. So we are all on a steep learning curve about technological abuse. It's a tough one. It's interesting. I quite by accident bumped into someone who knew well a woman who was just recently murdered. And all of his friends and families and colleagues said, never saw this coming. There were no red flags. We just didn't see it coming. Well, her family and friends didn't see her death coming, but they understood that something was very, very wrong. She had gone in college from being a vivacious, outgoing person to being someone who really didn't see her friends anymore, saw very little of her families. She always seemed like she cowered a little bit. She was, wanted to be helpful, wanted to please. She said, what's the word I'm looking for? She idolized her spouse, said what wonderful things about him all of the time. And so when it happened, they were devastated, but in fact, they weren't surprised, because one of the things that victims learn, and one of the things that becomes their greatest strength, is that they're not special and their stories are not unique. The details are different, but the stories are the same. It happens the same way every single time. There's the isolation, there's the demeaning diminishment of a person. And so what that person does is shift to, how can I make this better? I try to remind people that when you consider domestic violence or intimate partner abuse, go back and think about your own relationships, because these are two people who came together and they put their hope and their faith and their trust and their love in each other. So when it suddenly goes wrong or awry, they're confused. They don't know what's happened. So they just, by this time, are figuring it's all their fault. So they do everything they can to change, to please their partner, to go along with their partner. Very often, partners begin control by, where are you going? Who are you seeing? And call me when you get there. I want to know what you're doing. All of that. It's a possessiveness, and that is really an alarm bell. Should be an alarm bell for people who may very well find themselves in this condition. Next slide. Thank you. Very interesting dynamics on other indicators. You will see, particularly in teen dating violence, which is on the rise, you'll see that kids are missing class, they're dropping out of sports, their grades are going down, their friends change or their friends disappear, and it's not different for adults. I believe the number is like $8 billion lost a year in productivity in the United States due to domestic violence, because domestic violence follows you to work. The telephone calls, the texts, the emails, the harassment. So there are absences. Either you don't go in because you are too badly bruised, or you hurt too much, or you're not allowed to go to work, or you miss it because you are so anxious or depressed. And pretty soon, it's a spiral. So change of patterns is a really, really big thing for whether you're a teenager or an adult. Very often you see victims are afraid to make a choice, afraid to make a decision. They're very wary, and they're constantly looking for permission. You'll see a lot of that. And again, also the change of pattern. They're restricted. They are forbidden to see family and friends and work colleagues. And so their world shrinks. But when you do see them, they're pretty much always with their partner, and always deferring to that partner. Excuse me, I've already talked about some of these tactics, but these are very, very typical of what happens. And it happens in the earliest phases of an abusive relationship. It's how an abuser creates a place where all that can happen is the physical. It builds to that. There's the isolation, there's the intimidation, constantly coercing people. I went through a phase as a lawyer working on restraining orders where I had 6 women in a row whose husbands threatened to kill them, kill the children, and then themselves if they left. Also, damaging partners' relationships. I've talked about that. And the really tough one is, family. I can't believe your dad, he's so dumb. Your mother's fat and ugly. Your brother couldn't do anything right if he tried, whatever it is. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard those lines. Not making it up. This is really common stuff that we're looking at. And the being possessive and jealous comes early on. I've had victims tell me that it started as soon as the second date. It just became an all-consuming relationship. I like you. I really like you. No, I love you. I want to be with you. I don't want you to be with anybody else. And enough flowers and enough candy and enough of that fuss, and you begin to feel like you're completely special. And you forget that actually what's happening is someone is controlling you, is controlling your space and your time. Excuse me. As I mentioned, stalking, and unbelievably, stalking did not have significant criminal consequences until, 15, 20 years ago, probably. And there is a lot of research that says it is one of the leading indicators of lethality. If you are being stalked, and you heard Karen's story, her husband stabbed her 8 months after their divorce. And in all of those 8 months, he stalked her by phone. He hung outside her house. And so it's very, very, very dangerous. And you can read it for yourself. It's a course of conduct that is directed at a specific person, and it's meant to cause fear. And not only is it meant to cause fear, but it's meant to tell the victim, I know where you are, I can get to you anytime, and I will do with you whatever I want. It is a form of psychological abuse as well as physical. It's very, very stark. As you can see, it's subtle. It begins quietly, sort of, if you will, with criticizing, humiliating, threatening, and then very often does escalate to violence. Sometimes that violence is directed towards the victim. Sometimes it's directed towards a pet or other property. And as we mentioned, sexual assault. And of course, we know it can become life-threatening. Every year in the United States, about 1,500 women are murdered by their intimate partners. If there's a gun in the house, they're 5 times more likely to be murdered by their abuser. This is the World Health Organization has called this a World Health Crisis. The United Nations has called it the shadow pandemic. There are lots of nuances here, as we've discussed. It's not just a single incident, it's a series of incidents, and it can be any number of types of incidents. Very often we see that victims will do whatever they can to make it okay again. And there's always kind of a period of negotiating. If I do this, if I do that, it will get better. And of course, it doesn't. It just doesn't get better. What most people don't understand is that these relationships, the abuse in these relationships escalate. And as you heard in the film, it very often takes a victim 7 to 9 times leaving before she is gone for good. So what happens is it escalates, and then there's a blow up of some kind, and then we call it the flowers and candy period, where I'm sorry, you made me do it. I didn't want to do it. It'll never happen again. Let's go out for dinner. I love you more than anything. But when it starts again, it doesn't start down here at the bottom. It starts up here again. And it goes from there. And then it goes from there. So these flower and candy periods are only hiatuses to an escalation. And of course, multiple studies have been done. The fact is that staying in a relationship is sometimes safer for a victim than leaving. That's something we work very closely with victims on, a safety plan. What do you do? How do you stay safe and alive? When I first got to Interval House, I asked my advocates what worried them. What was their biggest worry in the course of their work? And every single one of them said without fail, I just don't want anyone to die on my watch. That's how dangerous leaving is. So, next slide, Kay. Okay, as I mentioned, well, we say obviously, but it hasn't always been a law. But assaulting, threatening, or stalking an intimate partner is a crime. Connecticut has actually been on the forefront of this, thanks to the Tracy Thurman case, which came out of Torrington. And Tracy Thurman was in an abusive, really horrible abusive marriage. She called the police multiple times. She was too afraid to leave. She finally got him out of the house, and he came back for her. And she called the police, and by the time they got there, he had beaten her very nearly to death. They finally arrested him, and he went to jail. And she, to this day, walks with a walker. She has a very difficult time speaking, but she healed. She healed as best she could. And when she came back to her home, she sued the police, and she won. And she won $3 million, which was a whole lot of money back in the 80s. But the bigger piece is that she changed the landscape, the legal landscape, all across the United States of America in domestic violence. There's nothing like money to get somebody's attention. And our relationships with the police have completely changed, all for the better, all for the better. But back in the day, it was not a close relationship. And what happened in the home happened in the home. It wasn't a crime. It was a domestic incident. And the police just didn't hold abusers accountable. So we in Connecticut are very grateful to her for what happened. And we have stayed progressive in amending our laws and adopting new laws to protect victims. One of the initiatives Interval House is engaging in is working with the LGBTQ plus community. We frankly, in Connecticut, I think, don't do a good enough job in communicating that we are welcoming, that we are affirming, and that our services are for everybody, whoever, wherever you are. And the statistics in that community are really stark. And I think one of the reasons that they are so high is because the queer community doesn't feel it has any place to go when this happens. And in addition to all of the other issues that they deal with on a regular basis, admitting that in addition to all of that, they have a violent relationship is just more than they can do. So we are working very, very hard to change that that perception, and it's imperative that we do. You can see from these slides the level of violence. Transgender women, it's widely known, are so vulnerable to homicide for just being who they are. You can see lesbian women and bisexual women experience a tremendous amount of physical abuse. 48, 61% compared to about 35% of heterosexual women, and 26% of gay men, and more than 37% of bisexual men have also experienced abuse. So it's an important initiative for us to get out there and make sure people know we're here and that we're available. It's interesting, the bullet there on Latinx. We did a survey in Bridgeport about 25 years ago, and the level of violence in that community at that time was very much tied to the notion of women and children as property. And that was a deep cultural belief. And when you were property, when you're perceived as property, you can be treated any way the property owner chooses. So, next slide. So Town of Windsor, in 2022, 96 clients with 254 contacts. What that means is that 254 different times we were in contact with one of those 96 victims. It's interesting, Windsor, South Windsor, Bloomfield, and Manchester all have numbers that have been going up over these last couple of years. When we've had an increase in hotline calls from those towns, Windsor specifically, as well as residents in our safe house. Like I said, this is everywhere. It's not just one place. Let's talk a little bit about supporting someone. I always say, and I literally always say when I speak to folks, that you do not have to be an expert to help someone who you think might be in an abusive relationship. The most important thing is that you stay connected. And it can be as innocuous as, hey, it's me, Kevin, just wanted to say hi, how are you? Hey, what's up? Haven't heard from you. I'm here. That, if you let a victim know that you are there for them, that you are available, that sometimes is all you have to say. Sometimes it opens a door and you can say, hey, wherever you are, whatever you do, just know I'm here for you. I'm always here for you. That is so powerful for someone who has been isolated and thought and been made to believe that they have no worth. It's incredibly powerful. So those are small things. You can start a conversation when you think the time is right. And you can see there some of the openings. I'm kind of worried about you. I haven't seen much of you. We used to be together, see each other, do fun things together. What's up? Is everything okay? Anything I can do for you? And then again, non-judgmental questions. What's this like for you? How can I best help you? Make sure that you listen. This is a conversation where you do most of the listening, and then support whatever decisions that victim may make. We spend, when I talk about I think about 6,000 calls that came into the hotline last year. Many, nearly half of them are not about crisis. They're about somebody calling to say, I don't understand what's happening to me. Or I think I'm in an abusive relationship. Or I think I'm being abused. What should I do? And we help with safety planning. We help people think through. We ask them questions about what they're experiencing. We help them think through how to navigate that. What's the best thing for them? It does not come like it did 30 years ago from the top down. We're never telling people what they should do or how they should do it. We are letting the victim tell us. A victim, and this is really important to remember, will always know better than anybody else how to stay safe. And we all need to appreciate and respect that. So being a good listener is the most important thing that you can do. All right, what can you do? Well, you're doing it. You're learning something more about domestic violence. You're learning something more about Interval House and the resources we have. You could always mention us and talk about us. You can jot down our hotline. You can always find us on the internet at intervalhousect.org. Just the most important thing is I tell people just after I tell them, most important thing you can do for me today is tell people what you heard, tell people what you learned about domestic violence in Interval House, and reach out to your colleagues and your friends and tell them about us. Spread the word about us. If we can raise awareness about this issue, if we can shine a light on it so that there is less shame on it and more information about it, we will be able to help more people. And we cannot do that by ourselves. We're less than 40 people. We need everybody in our 24 communities to help us with it. It's one of the great things about Zoom. I mean, let's face it, there are very few silver linings to the pandemic. But one is that we are having this session, you're recording it, and you can now go share it. And I will urge you to share it. Those are the things that the most important things that you can do. So I talked a little bit about our services. Here they are. As I said, we're a crisis intervention agency. We don't do other things. We don't do transitional housing. We don't do mental health. We don't do those things. But what we do, and we do it well, is we partner with the people who do those things really well in the community. So starting out with behavioral health, we have a couple of private practitioners who donate their time, and we partner with places like Behavioral Health, Hartford Behavioral Health, or the Institute of Living. We partner with The Bridge in Westport, who has counseling services and all kinds of wonderful services for kids. We partner with The Village so that we fill whatever voids we have with people that we can rely on to step in and work with our victims. We have a very good, very strong relationship with the Department of Children and Families. When you leave, you know, it's, well, I won't editorialize. When you leave a relationship, you have 5 days to get that child, your children, back into school. And if you don't get them back into school, DCF will start proceedings to take them from you. And that is the least optimal thing that can happen. So we have a very strong relationship with them. We also have strong relationships with schools in our region. So we can figure out where's the safest place for that child to be. Someplace it's staying right where he or she has been. Sometimes it's someplace completely different. But we do those types of things. We also have been so swamped over these last 2.5, 3 years that we have developed solid relationships with hotels in our region so that we never turn anyone away. We never turn anyone away who is in crisis and who is in danger. We cannot provide housing for the homeless, but we can provide, and we do provide, emergency shelter for those who are in crisis. And again, we never turn anyone away. I am most proud of our work in the courts. We have the largest court advocacy program in the state. The highest number of criminal cases, domestic cases, are in Hartford, followed by Bridgeport, followed by Manchester. And we work with both Hartford and Manchester. I tell people, you know, I was a lawyer. I will tell you, I never knew anybody who went to court for a fun time. It's not fun if you're going to court. You're just not going there for a good time. In addition to which, what those of us who are involved in the court system in some way forget is that most people have never been in a court and will never be in a court. So think about this. You have been totally traumatized, maybe injured, and your partner, the love of your life, has been arrested, and you have no idea what to do. Well, happily, we are there to help. We are help to explain the process, the system, how to navigate it, and then how to advocate for it. My advocates are not lawyers. They cannot cross what is called the bar, but they can advocate, and they have deep, deep relationships with judiciary, with family relations, with prosecutors, with everyone they need to help a victim get to his or her next best place. And that's true in both the criminal court and the civil court. A criminal court is where you go and get a protective order. That's when an arrest has been made. And the civil court is where you go without an arrest just because you are frightened and afraid for your life. And we help victims identify what those issues are and get them down on paper, walk them through the process, and hopefully they are granted restraining orders. And then, as I touched on, 30 plus years ago when I started, we celebrated when the police let us into the training academy for 3 hours for an entire class program to train on domestic violence. We now work hand in glove with the police. And we have a program called the Lethality Assessment Program, which is a set of questions developed by researchers that indicate the prevalence or the imminence of significant bodily harm or threat of death. And so an officer, 100%, this is where Connecticut was the first state in the country, 100% of law enforcement signed on. And every time there's a domestic call, they take this sheet of paper with them and they say, sorry, this is my job. I have to do this. Let me ask you these questions. They are questions like, has he, she ever tried to kill you? Has he, she ever tried to strangle you? Does he, she have a gun? Does he, she have access to a gun? If a victim answers 4 of these questions in the affirmative, that victim is at high risk. It's an objective test. That victim is at high risk for lethality, which is a very nice way of saying being murdered. The cop then calls us directly and tells us about the case and offers the phone to the victim. Very often it's not safe for that victim to get on the phone, and she doesn't or he doesn't. But what's happened is that we now know who she is and she knows who we are. And we have that shared contact information. And our advocates get in touch with the victims within 24 hours. So we believe that that is going to save lives. The average number of deaths in Connecticut has been around 14 over the course of the last 15 years or so. For a while, it went from 18, 19 down to about 12. It's been back up, which we've seen. But we believe, along with the police that we now work hand in glove with, we believe that if domestic violence is predictable, it's prevented, it's preventable. And if we can get to that place, we can help people not only move on to a good and wonderful life free of violence and fear, but they will live. So that's very, very important. And then just like tonight, we do community outreach. We pre-pandemic, we reached about 14,000 people a year. It's not enough. We need to reach more. And so we have hired Kay. We are doubling down on this. We are going to use all the technology possible, whether we're in person or we're via Zoom, whether we just deliver product. We are going to reach as many people as possible. We have got to break this cycle. And there are only 2 ways of doing it. One is working with children who are victims and breaking the cycle so that they don't become abusers or connect with abusive people as they grow up, or through community education. So here are some additional ways that you can help us. Gift cards are really, people say, oh, that's so impersonal. It's not. It is a very big thing. One of the first things you're taught as an advocate is to let a victim choose his or her own chair when they come in, because they haven't been able to do that. When we hand a gift card to a victim, we are saying, we value you. We trust you to use this in the way that will be best for you. And it's incredibly empowering for victims to have that opportunity. We also, because of COVID, we stopped taking in-kind donations. We just couldn't take the risk. And so on our website, which is intervalhousect.org, there's an Amazon wish list. And so folks can buy us. We get cases of Clorox. We've got a lady in Westport who sends us a case of diapers every month. It's absolutely wonderful. And then, of course, financial contributions are never turned away. Absolutely not. But I want you to take from this the two most important ways you can help us. Tell your family and friends what you heard today. Tell your family and friends about Interval House. And wherever you can, introduce us to others so we can talk about this and shine a light on it. Most important thing. Okay, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Say that 3 times fast. We have 2 more big events coming up. One is October 23rd at 9 a.m. It's the Jennifer Farber Dulos Memorial Walk to End Domestic Violence. And we will meet at Dunkin' Donut Parks for what else? Dunkin' Donuts and coffee. And we will walk the warning track and have moments of silence for not only victims, but survivors. We have a short program, and then there will be activities on the concourse. And then November 3rd, and that's $25. November 3rd, we have at 8 a.m., I know, way too early, 8 a.m. breakfast in Simsbury, Connecticut at the gorgeous Riverview. And the man who owns the Riverview donates it to us every year. He pays for, obviously, the place. He's got the place. He pays for the staff, and he pays for the food. And it's a delicious breakfast. And so we have up to 500 seats that we can fill. And we have a program. And this year we are honoring our law enforcement officers, which, of course, given the news of this last week, is all the more important. So we will be honoring law enforcement and thanking them for what they do for us each and every day. And you're all invited to come. Tell your friends, bring your family. You'll learn more about Interval House and the work that we do. So there you go. Would love to take questions. Any questions? Hello,
Hey,
Jane.
Mary Jane, I just wanted to say that most of our audience is our council members and Jane, our state representative. So we are so happy to have them, everybody on board. Newjet Black Burke is a council member, of course, Lisa and Ms. Terranova. So most of our, almost half of our council is women. So these are 3 of our heavy hitters here. And we are so happy that they attended. And I will be sure to put the announcement about the Dunkin' Donut Park on our Facebook so we can share that out. And this recording will also be on YouTube and our WIN TV as well. I'll turn it back over to questions.
We have Jane hand up if you would like to ask your question.
Sure. Do you know what the statistics are, since I deal a lot with the 65 and over population? Is there abuse over, and how prevalent is it?
Mary Jane, you're on mute.
Do you know how many people will try to get me on mute? Well, in any event, I have those numbers somewhere deep in our annual report, and I will get those to you, Jane. I will tell you it's not prevalent in the sense that the highest percentage of victims that we work with are in the 25 to 59 age range, the vast majority of them. Our oldest client was 88. Her husband was slowly trying to kill her, and her friends got very worried about her, called her daughter. Her daughter and son went to visit, and her mother had been hospitalized, and they literally kidnapped her out of the hospital, brought her home to Connecticut. She weighed something like 98 pounds and was very, very sick. And the following year, we honored her, and she was up to 121 pounds. She was wearing a navy blue sequin gown, and her last words to the crowd were, "This just shows it's never too late to be happy." So it's not prevalent, but every single year, we have victims in that 65 and above. We had a client that we worked with for 26 years. 26 years she stayed. And when times were tough, she called the hotline. And the happiest call we got last year was when she said she was ready to leave. So it's, you're never too young, you're never too old, and everything in between.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I see Jody's hand is up.
Thank you. Mary Jane, thanks for that presentation. That was great. In addition to being on the town council, I'm a pediatrician, and I'm going to be the president of the Connecticut chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics come December. So
I think congratulations are in order.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to offer that as another avenue for outreach to people. I know I have heard talks from Interval House before through my work, and certainly in pediatrics, we often are able to have some one-on-one time with moms that might be in a risky situation. That is one place where they sometimes are allowed to really go on their own with their child. And so
Right.
we're taught to really help with that screening and outreach. And so if you want to do a webinar for the pediatricians, we do lunchtime webinars, usually monthly. And so I can connect with you offline to perhaps do that.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Our statewide coalition also is working with women's healthcare professionals to train the trainer so that one person in every group practice is actually certified as a domestic violence advocate, and then is able to inform co-workers. We also, as a part of that program, are putting literature in those offices because, as you pointed out, that sometimes is a safe place. So I would love to connect with you, and very happy to do a webinar.
Great. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you.
And I know that someone is using Cassie's Zoom, but I see your hand up. If you may, you can ask your question now.
That's Douchette you're trying to call on, I think.
Oh, thank you. I think that was Jody. And I do apologize, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I'm driving, so I can't turn my camera on. But one, thank you for the presentation. In my other life, I do work for Hartford Public Schools, and we've had the opportunity to work with Interval House. They actually came to an awareness event that we had. But that leads me to my question. Trying to find out from you, Mary Jane, would you be interested in sharing some of this information with our Office of
I would love to.
A lot of time,
getting into the schools.
because a lot of times, there are young
critical.
women.
Yes.
Absolutely. So just wanted to offer that as a source. Ms. Morales, who leads that work here for Windsor Public Schools. I'm sure she'd be willing to coordinate with our high school and even as young as some of our middle schools. I know in our school district, we see that even in middle schools. So just wanted to offer that as another avenue and outlet to share the great work of Interval House. And thank you so much for the presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We would love that. Teen dating violence is really, it's 1 in 3 kids experience it, you know, and it's, people don't think that you need to start in 6th or 7th grade, but you do. And and again, that's one of the magic things about this Zoom experience we've all had. We can deliver this material in person or not. It can be a mix, and we can record it and leave it. Once you get past the idea that you have to own your product, the world is your oyster. You can go anywhere and do anything. So we would love, 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 love to be a part of that.
And I do see Lisa's hand is up.
Thank you so much, Kay, and thank you, Judge Washington and the Human Relations Commission's members, Cassie, and of course, Mary Jane, for presenting tonight and sharing this valuable information. We are, I'm also, besides Deputy Mayor, I'm also one of the leaders of the Windsor Women's Democratic Caucus, and State Rep Garibay and Councilor Terranova and I are planning something next month after the election of a similar forum, and we'd love to do a follow-up to Judge Washington's work. So Mary Jane, we have State Representative Jillian Gilchrist who's going to present, but we'd love to ask you also if you would be willing to do a little bit of a version as well, so we can have a couple of panelists. So I just wanted to reach out to you. Thank you very much for this information and invite you to do that. And then lastly, I heard what you were talking about, how we could help, but as a municipal officer, is there anything in particular that municipalities can do to help beyond the communication efforts and letting people know that you're here?
The most important thing is to get us into your schools, get us into your civic groups. I spent some time a year or so ago, it was so valuable, with the town of South Windsor's youth services. The youth services people, if we, it was only 6 or 7 people, but it was magic because they were all out there working with kids, with teenagers. And so to be able to reach them is a really, really important thing. Just including us whenever something comes up is important. Kay and I will show up if you got 2 people or 400 people. We're happy to do that. We're happy to bring materials. It's just raising awareness is the most important thing that we can do, unquestionably.
Thank you. I know between myself and the Honorable Judge Washington, we will be able to reach out to youth services, social services, and any other area, rec department, senior center, whatever. Put the vibes out there, and hopefully have some opportunities for you to share more information. Thank you so much, Mary.
Oh no, thank you. Thank you.
And Mary Jane, we had a question in the chat that had said, how can you tell the difference in concern versus violence and control?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
The ask there was, Kay and Mary Jane, was if in the example you gave, if I'm saying, if that person was asking me if they're saying, for instance, you are, I don't know how to phrase what she was asking me. She was saying basically, if someone is concerned about you, how do you make the difference between them being concerned about you versus if it's a violent tactic being used, like putting you down or something like that, versus, oh, you're not feeling well because you are overeating or something like that? It comes from a medical standpoint, I think is what she was asking me to.
Mhm.
You know, if I tell you to stop smoking because it's going to end up giving you lung cancer versus I'm telling you to stop smoking because you're a horrible person, is there a difference between that you can tell?
I'm still not sure that I understand the question.
I was a
but-
little confused with it too, so.
Yeah, but we all have instincts. And I think I know for me, I trust my instincts. And I think most people do. Or at least when something is instinctive to you, it makes you stop and think a little bit.
Right.
So I think if you are feeling an instinct that you have a friend in trouble, you need to go with that instinct. Particularly if any of the warning signs are there, like the isolation, like the change in personality. I think you need to go with your instincts and know that it could be taken. Someone may become very defensive about it, which is why it's important not to be judgmental, but just to be open and, be there. That's all you really have to do.
Exactly.
Mary Jane, could I just, it wasn't my question, but I'm wondering if the person was asking, how can they tell the difference between expressions of concern and control in a relationship?
Thank you, Lisa. That's where I was trying to get to.
Yes. In other words, if this person seems to be wondering, if a person says, I want to know where you're going or when you're going to come back, or, I don't think you should be smoking. Where does expressions of concern differ from control?
Good for you. It goes right back to our first slide. Domestic violence, intimate partner abuse is a pattern of behavior. It's not something that happens once. It happens on a regular and consistent basis, and it generally escalates. So it goes from, so where are you going, to where are you going? Who are you going to be with? Why? You can't tell, because all of the time we turn to our loved ones or our friends and say, yo, where are you going? What's up? But that is very different than where are you going?
Right.
So it's I think you know it when you hear it, you know it when you feel it, that somebody is trying to control what you are doing. I hope that helps.
That helps. That helps. The other follow-up question to that, I'll go ahead and ask it, Kay. As dudes, what can we do to help? I know the men make a difference. Men Against Domestic Violence is a program, but how can we speak on that a little bit and what we can do to help?
Well, the Men Make a Difference group, I say to them, because many of them are very busy. I have, this is a good example, and I know he doesn't mind if I tell his story, but I asked Harold Sparrow, he's the CEO of the YMCA. And he said, I can't do that. I run a nonprofit just like you. I can't be giving you money. I have to raise my own money. I said, Harold, you are a very tall Black man who is the CEO of the YMCA. All I need you to do is stand up, because when boys and men see you standing with us, it's all they need to see. All they need to know. By the way, Judge, I could say the very same thing about you.
Oh God, here we go.
Oh yes, I could.
There's crackling. There's crackling, Jane. I hear crackling in the middle.
But it's about being a role model. At a press conference we had recently, I had a father talk about his son and how why it was important to him, and how it had helped his son. And that was one of the reasons why he joined. So being a role model, talking about it, it's, you know, it's very much the same for whether you're male or female. We need to talk about this. It's been in the dark so long, and it's similar to the Me Too movement in that people feel ashamed. They feel ashamed, they feel guilty, they feel badly. You know, how could I have loved that person? I must not be very smart. So shining a light on it is just incredibly important. If you go out and tell people about this gathering, it coming from you, it will mean a great deal. Patrick, when you go out and you do all the things that you do, it will mean a great deal to have a man talking about it. Though I will tell you, 23% of our victims last year were men. So it's not like men can't be victims too. They absolutely can. But being a role model and talking about this is the most important thing that you can do.
I think the machismo gets in the way sometimes, because as victim, if you're a victim, you don't want to tell anybody. If you're a male coming from a place of support, it's like, how do I approach this? What do I say? If a woman is coming, if you feel a woman is in that situation, how do you broach that? Because they're already coming from a place of fear against a man, you know, or a female, for that matter. You know, it's a catch-22 for us in some ways.
Well, no question. I mean, our perception is that women would never be abusive. Women are, you know, the more vulnerable sex, and, you know, they're more vulnerable. So of course they're more likely to be in these situations. And men are, you know, big and strong, and so they wouldn't be in these situations. And of course, it's just not true. This can happen to anybody, anytime, anywhere. As I've said to people, nobody cares about the title on your business card.
They sure
You
don't.
know, it can happen to anybody, anytime.
Excellent.
Mary Jane, we also have 2 other questions. One of them is, how does Interval House support neurodiverse and differently able-bodied individuals?
That is a great question. And I'll state what I think is the obvious right off the bat. For one, everything in our building is accessible. So we're very careful about that. We also have, this isn't exactly on point, but we also have translation services, and we have access to people who can sign, so that we can always be in communication with a victim. All of that being said, it's a community where we know, sadly, horribly, abuse happens. And I don't think we do enough outreach to that community as well. When you think about the difficulties of surviving as a disabled person who is being, that's tough. As I said, we are accessible, and we are affirming to everyone. But I just think we could do a lot more education and outreach around that issue.
The following question is, what has Interval House's experience been with non-binary or gender fluid individuals? Is the narrative the same or is it different?
All of the above. Yes, we certainly have had experience. One of the things is that we don't ask. When you come to Interval House in crisis, we don't ask you if you're male or female. We don't ask you any of those gender identity questions. We are concerned about getting you in, helping you be safe, and all of those things. So we don't always have statistics on it. And if you think about it, you know, asking that question might, towards someone sensitive, might just close them down, just shut them down, and not want to communicate with us. So we're sort of at, you know, a loss in the sense that that's just not part of our intake process. We obviously know through self-disclosure that we work with all of that population, no question about it. We are in the process of, we've had in the last year, 2 trainings for the staff on this issue, on working with the LGBTQ plus community. And we are about to have a 3rd, surprise, Kay. I'm working with a group in LA called predictably the LA LGBTQ plus initiative. And I have finally found someone who can talk to us. I mean, the issues are all the same, and victims need to get to the same place, which is safe, and to a new life. But there are additional factors that we need to be sensitive to, need to know and use as we work with victims from the queer community. So we are going to have another training on November 3rd from this group, so that we know when somebody calls and we pick up the phone, we are being the very best that we could be. When we have a victim in court who has some of these issues, the attending issues, we know we're the best advocates that we can be.
Okay, I want to say, because we're getting close to time for transition, I want to say tomorrow, I have asked our wonderful town council to present us a proclamation declaring in the town of Windsor recognizing Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Wonderful.
And in that regard, I know this is last minute. I would like to transfer that to Interval House.
Wonderful.
So if no one is available from Interval House to come receive it, I will have it sent to you. In honor of Domestic Awareness Month and the work that you are doing. We recognize that here in Windsor and how very important it is. And I've taken all of it to heart, and I've learned so much here this evening. And I'm so grateful for the work that you do and the tireless efforts that you and your staff have put forward to it.
Thank you. That's tomorrow night?
It's at 7:30. Okay.
Well, please send me the information and we'll find somebody to be there.
All right, will do.
We never turn down a proclamation.
All right, thank you so much.
No, thank you all so much. I just can't tell you how much we appreciate the opportunity.
All right, awesome. So I thank you again for being here. I thank Kay again for being here and the audience members. Again, we will have another discussion on Cassie, what is the title you're giving this now?
It's Conversation on Differences series. We formerly had it on Conversation on Race series, but we are trying to be more expansive towards everyone's intersections with identity. So it's Conversation on Differences series. Next, we're going to focus on policy advocacy and neurodiverse communities and in parentheses, abled communities as well. So we're gonna have a great conversation. And there's another event on Tuesday. We're partnering with the National Black Cooperative to talk about policy and the impact of our lives.
Right. So we have a full schedule coming up for the next 10 months of our time as a commission. So I hope that you all will join us again and tell your friends. Again, this will be on YouTube probably tomorrow. And I think some people will share it on Facebook as well. So Mary Jane, don't worry, we'll get the word out. Okay,
Alrighty.
we're doing the
I'm
work.
counting on you.
We're doing the work, okay?
Okay,
Thank you all. Go enjoy that soup, Mary
I will do that.
Jane. And I
Thank you.
appreciate so much.
Thank you all.
Dr. Terranova, did you want to say something else?
Nope, I was just gonna say goodnight and thank you.
All right, thank you.
Right.
Jane, did you want to say something else?
Okay,
Bye-bye. You all take care.
all right, bye-bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. All right, let me make you host, Patrick. There we go. You are our host, and we are all good. Thank you, Mom. Thanks,
Yeah,
Mom.
well,
You're the real
just-
MVP.
All right, thank you, Cass, and thank you, Patrick. I think that QR code screwed people over. They are not familiar with that kind of, so I think we need to revert back to the old way of them linking up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get this out. That was very powerful. My
Yeah,
God.
was
this
very
was
powerful.
amazing, and I'm kind of glad we kind of kept it a bit short because I like, it's just this was great because I know some people said that they had some things, but like this was great,
Yeah,
short, sweet, to the point.
10, 11 people it was good. Yeah, it was. So I appreciate all of your efforts, Patrick and Cassie. Cassie, my right hand, and Patrick, my left. So I just love working with you both. Thank you so much for making this event what it was.
Yes, and thank you for working with the technical difficulties. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for coming. My mom and dad are here.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
No.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.